Welcome to Small Town Big Life Podcast, coming at you from the tool shed, very poppy, behind Grace Fellowship Church. I'm Pastor Drew. Jackie Brown is flying the plane. And today we have with us Jenn and Steve. Woo-hoo. Jen Goschel and Steve Longnecker are leadership in the leadership group here at Grace Fellowship Church. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. A few weeks ago, we did a podcast on women in ministry and got some interesting feedback. All good, but we decided there's a lot more to talk about. So we're kind of continuing in that vein. Mm-hmm. How you guys doing?
Good.
Good? Steve's got an injured leg. You can't see it under the table, but it's there's leeches and a pool of water getting all the blood out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's right. I'm sorry. I knew it was one of those two things. How you doing, Jen?
Fantastic.
I know you love getting on here and talking. You like?
I'm good.
Are you good?
Yeah. I'm ready.
When we were Star Wars, you. But
that
this
was
is
my first one. So
no, you've been here. Steve, this is your first time here.
Yep.
All right, so we'll jump right in. Now, you guys, for those of you watching this who don't know, Jenn and Steve are largely responsible, part of the team that brought me here and my wife. So they're obviously capable of making outstanding decisions. And in all seriousness, though, we have a list of questions. So, Jen, when I talked to you, my wife actually said, oh, yeah, Jen has some definite thoughts about the topic of leadership and ministry and that kind of stuff, but you and I never really got into the details of what they were. Yeah. So I know you heard the last podcast, right. And then so share with me what was kind of going through your head about.
So you had Kayla and Denisha, and I obviously had them in youth group and watched them grow, which was awesome. And there it is, number one, awesome. Right?
I love that. That's
We're
your word.
We're
going
to put a counter up on the screen.
Yeah,
you should.
It's a good word.
And so just thinking of all the opportunities that they have now is a little different than what I had back when I was starting out doing that in my 20s. So it's a little different. And we've been to some different youth things, and there just wasn't as many opportunities for women to be youth pastors. So anytime we would go to a youth conference or camp or whatever, if Steve was with us, they would assume that he was the one in charge.
Yep.
Because he's the
people
man.
People still do sometimes.
And people still do. And
kids do.
And
actually, even.
Which is fine because he is in charge more now, but back then I'm in charge. I tell everybody what to do.
Right. That's it's fun, isn't it? It's good.
I organize. I do all of the things, and I'm not saying that I need the credit for that. I don't care about that. It's just, you're just assuming that the man is in charge of the group because youth pastor,
Right.
So there's some other things that we've had going to some different things, and it's just mainly men focused. So it's hard. Do you have any comments on that?
No,
noticing that?
Well, yeah, you and I have talked about it even, at specific events, the male youth pastor was always the one that was recognized, youth pastor of the year, whatever, different things like that, there wasn't really that opportunity there for others, especially if they didn't have a title,
Right.
One thing was the title, and then second thing was female. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good luck. Ain't happening.
And then as a volunteer as well. So if you're in a church and you're the youth pastor and you're getting paid for that position, and I've seen that even locally here, it's frustrating because I'm doing all of the work that a youth pastor would do, but volunteering for that because there's just not the opportunity for that. Plus a normal job.
Plus a normal, yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful with the table when you bump it. It's super sensitive. I'm just letting you know, because I do it too. But no, I see what you're talking. The church I came from, the pastor's daughter was the exact equivalent of what you do. She preaches a lot. She speaks a lot now, and they do. Anyway, the point is she leads the youth ministry, and she always has. And so when I came here and I met you in the process of all getting to know each other and me seeing how things work, that wasn't a surprise to me. And
right.
But I think quite often that's the case. And quite often they do look, because there is this preconceived notion that there's got to be a man in charge. Women obviously
Right.
will need to, I mean, and it's like men and women have their respective roles in the church and leadership and in God's kingdom, but they're of equal importance.
Right.
So it is commonplace. I don't think this church, I don't see people like acting like that, because usually when anything of youth related comes up, the first thing, no offense, Steve, but the first thing is, have you talked to Jenn? And, yeah.
And yeah.
People can come ask me questions all they want, and I will probably have a decent answer.
Right.
But if I don't know, or if there's a better answer,
Yeah.
I pointed.
And it's not all just one important thing is sometimes there's too much thought given to the sex, the male or the female, and not enough thought given to the person.
Right.
Like Jenn is not, I don't believe, more capable of doing this because she's a female. I think it's because she's Jenn, and she has Jenn's brain, and that, you know what I mean? Does that make sense without?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, yeah, Jenn, you're right. I mean, it is weird when you give so much of yourself to something because you love it.
Yeah.
And then someone comes in and just assumes,
Yeah,
since you're a
and
woman, you're obviously not the one in charge here, right? And you're like, what?
Well, actually,
That would be like if someone walked into the Gateway Cafe, one of the finest restaurants in the area. If someone walked into your business and you talked to them and they said, where's the guy in charge? You'd probably
That's
be like,
happened a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Actually.
has it really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, and it's I don't know if it's the area or what.
You should go. I'll go get him and come back out with a fake message. You go, what can I do
Well,
for
I
you,
mean,
sir?
my dad was in charge. In charge, I guess you could say.
You kind of put him in that
He's not.
position.
Yeah.
Right.
No, he was there.
Right. You should
did
get some guy
stuff,
with
but-
like face tattoos and a big earring. Come out, going, what's up?
Yeah.
You got a problem? Is there something wrong?
I know,
They'll be like,
like
no,
that.
sir, everything's fine here. Thank you for the wonderful service. I'm sorry. All right.
I'm not, and I wasn't saying that. I didn't want to say that just because of my experience and showing what I did. Well, I did this and I'm in charge. I don't care about that. And you know that. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I do know
But
that.
I do. But I know there's other people out there that have the same struggles, just like you said it back at your other church. And then even thinking about my mom and how much she had to do as the principal, woman principal with the Christian school. So that was difficult to watch as well. And there was some, things.
well, there's so many opportunities with really great women being missed out on because of that mindset.
Right. Well, right, because they're taking the
No, you're not a man. Sorry, I can't have that position.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
The biblical principle we talked about in the last the Women in Ministry podcast was what the Bible says about women pastors. And then for those of you who may not have heard it, we kind of unpacked that and to examine the truth about, yes, the Bible says that, yes, here's the reasons, but no, that doesn't mean women can't speak, teach, and fulfill leadership roles.
Right.
Right.
Now, I've always thought it was kind of unfair that in youth ministry, we're not a church really that's large enough to do this, but when a church expands enough to put people on payroll, it does seem like the guys come first. And like Denisha spent money and years in college to specialize in youth ministry. I can't imagine going to someone who's put nothing into it and trying to move them ahead of the line after she's demonstrated so much commitment, loyalty, and talent. She's good at what she does. And so I struggle with that as well. And I almost want to look at the male population and say, if you have a problem with what I'm saying, then why don't you step up and get involved?
Right.
Because it seems like the gears in the church are turning about 65% due to females.
Yep.
And it's just the truth.
It is
the truth.
I mean, and I'm a man, and I will say that.
Yeah.
And obviously there's times I'm aware that I'm the one that needs to step up, but there are times I want to look at people and I'm just like, so do something about it.
Right.
I know.
Like, it's your turn to step up.
I think that
what you need to
mentality largely comes from the pride aspect of men that don't want to be involved in church because they look at it like, oh, that's a nice little thing my wife's involved in to keep our let our family have a moral value system, and I'll promote her in that. I'm going to go to work and come home, have a couple beers, and see what she learned from church today. They look at it as like a ceramics class instead of the
Or a
eternal,
crutch.
the balance of their eternal. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember if I mentioned that in our last sermon about people that diminish it and look at it as that's one of the things they think. Oh, and the women realize, you know what? No, this is really part of the fabric of life. And when I say it's a pride thing, it's because there's a lot of men who think pride ultimately means you can do anything without God on your own. And when people think, I don't really need church. I mean, that's a pride thing. It's cool that my wife does it. That way the kids can learn some good lessons. And it's like, dude, you're supposed to be leading this.
One thing that I don't even know, it probably comes up every several weeks or something in youth group with the kids is I tell them all the time that I'm pretty good on doing things on my own. I can do them. But it's for sure not my best. I'm way better with God, and I'm happiest when I'm actually doing what he wants me to be doing, when I'm doing things under his power and his control, all of that. I'm better and I'm happier, and everybody else and everything else, the church, work, whatever, all those things are better too. And, that doesn't make it a crutch, nothing like that. It's just real experience in my own life that when I actually let God work in my life, that's when things are best. Maybe not best like physically or like, with whatever's going on in life or whatever, but that's the best. That's the happiest. That's the ultimate.
And how do the kids react to that? I mean, there's the difference between you saying that privately with this group of youth that you're trying to, impressionable youth, versus him saying it on a Sunday in front of everyone. How do they react? Do they comment?
They do sometimes, yeah. Oftentimes, I think when it comes up, and I don't even know how it comes up necessarily, not right now anyways, there's usually something in my brain I'm thinking of, an example, usually where I have failed, honestly.
Well, yeah.
And then I can actually use that real life example of my own to show the kids, hey, look, I'm real. I mess up, all those things that they need to see. And then the other side of that, I do fail. Yeah, I mess up, whatever it may be. But then with God, he helps turn that around and helps me to grow.
Right.
And I think when you can give real life examples like that of your own as a youth leader, that matters to the kids big time.
Matters big. More is caught than taught.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They're watching.
Big time. Yeah, big time. Let's see. List. We have lists. Lists again. We have lots of lists. I'm going to zip through here and go see the one that sticks out. Well, I guess the first one's pretty telling. Jen, we'll start with you. What was your relationship like with the church when you were young? Now, I think I know the answer, but go ahead. I think you've told me.
Did I?
Well,
you tell my story for me.
Could I? Jen was born in the poor neighborhoods. Yeah, go ahead.
I would assume that Steve and I probably have pretty similar.
Oh, no, you're going to tell his story.
Yeah, so I'm going to just...
That's pretty close.
We're going to just say it all right here. I grew up in the church. I literally was here when this building was built. So I've been here forever and grew up in the church, loved coming. We had some awesome programs. I never left. So, I mean, we've had some things, but we've worked through it. I mean, because when you, like, everybody experiences church hurt. And if you do, I mean, most people do, I would say. But if you can get over that, the fact that Jesus is the only reason why we're doing anything. So, but yeah, we had an awesome youth group and kids clubs. It was called, we had like boys and girls clubs when I was younger and loved coming. I was here Sundays, Wednesdays, and any other time we had something. So, and I loved it. I didn't have a problem. Like, I wasn't one of those kids where I hated coming. I just loved it. And I always have.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know how far back your involvement in the church went, obviously childhood, but I know that this church, the history of this church, I've learned from way back because I've talked to everyone here, including the older people. And I know that you and Steve and a few others have gone through every transformation with the church and stayed with the church that it could possibly go through. Every growing pain, every loss, every leadership difference, every split, every battle, every war, every sad thing, every good thing. So the depths of what
stuff.
Yeah, you guys are like sewn to the fabric of the history of this church.
Yeah.
So it's like that, and I bring that up because if anyone listening, you guys aren't just two people that walked in and said, "Hey, we like this church and we'll be in leadership here." This church is literally part of your entire life, and I know for a fact that your mom was a pillar of this church.
Yeah,
and so I know that when you talk about these kids, that the care comes from, like I said, you being a part of the church, not you just fulfilling a role. Because there's some people that fulfill a role in the church, and that's good. That's good because you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
But and then there's other people like you guys who are literally almost a part of the building because you're so committed to what has been going on here for so long. So
yeah, I think back. I think I've been 2003. I ended up coming back after college, or I switched colleges. I transferred to Penn College, and they didn't have a youth leader here, and I was like, well, got some
20 years.
Shh,
look at that.
Don't say that.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, it's been 20 years. 20 years I've been
Wow.
doing youth. So, and not the whole time. Like, there was other people that came in and helped out and stuff and led. But I've been helping with youth ministry for 20 years. And yeah, they needed somebody. So I was like, well, I'll do that. I like it. And then I had an awesome experience. My youth leader was awesome. We did lots of trips and lots of fun stuff and just made it cool. So I wanted to do that too. So yeah.
Mine's similar, but does have some differences. I grew up at a different church. Actually came here when I moved back to the area after college, but same as Jen, I grew up in the church. The doors were open. I was here Sunday school, Sunday morning, Sunday night service, Wednesday night service. All the doors were open.
there used to be a Wednesday night service here?
The church I grew up at.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yep.
sorry. Go ahead.
Yep.
We did here too at one point.
Midnight, 2 a.m.
Actually. Yeah.
All,
Yeah,
all
whatever.
the things. You were here.
After everything else, stay late now. So yeah, same thing. I grew up, had a good relationship with the church as a kid. I didn't have much of a youth group experience,
Right.
like very little. And what I did have, honestly, was not good, really. It was
Why?
like a bad experience. There was just nothing there.
Oh,
We didn't do anything.
kind of being just like herded around, like out of sight, out of mind kids type thing.
Yeah, like we didn't do anything. The guy that was running it, he was fine. It was not his gift, in my opinion, looking back anyways.
Yeah.
Right.
Did he like it? Yeah, I think so. But I don't think it was doing anything for us as teenagers.
It was one of those things where, and you see this a lot, churches are like, for grown-ups, and the kids are here, so got to do something with them. That
He was actually
have
paid.
I'm sorry?
He was actually paid
Wow.
as an associate
There you
slash
have
youth
it.
pastor.
That's what it used to be. Give the youth pastor gets a volleyball and a Bible and half the salary of the pastor.
But I mean, and we actually, I'm trying to think, probably, I might only had youth group two or maybe 3 years, looking back out of my high school years,
Right.
middle school, high school years, maybe more than that, but that's all I can remember. But then when I went to college and then I moved back to the area a year or so after school and told my parents, hey, look, I'm going to church look, honestly, just so you know. You guys do your thing. I'm cool with that, but I'm going to look around. Ended up here. Started working with the elementary age kids at some point in time. I honestly don't know what year. I really don't. And then...
I stole him.
She did.
I stole him from the kids clubs
I fought it.
because I needed use.
I fought it.
But you do, though. You have to have male and female
Yeah.
mentor.
You
Yeah.
And it's interesting in the modern age how you and I have talked about it on several occasions. I have pretty strict policies on where I'll be when I talk with kids.
Yeah.
Because the modern age, there's been so many males that have abused kids
Yeah.
in private. I'm like, you can't come in my office without
Right.
your parents. I had a girl here last summer that wanted to talk to me about something. I said, okay. So we went out. I said, let's go outside because
Yep.
kids clubs or youth group was. We were on. I wanted to make sure we were in front of the camera.
Right.
And I put a camera in my hallway so people can see who comes. I'm so. And you and I talked about. We're like hypersensitive.
Absolutely.
Everything has to
Yep.
be documented.
I won't even pick up a male youth group kid for youth group without
one
express knowledge of their parent.
Right.
You know, I have spoken to them, text, whatever, preferably in writing. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, I won't even pick up a guy. I will not pick up a female.
Yeah, that's well. I got
It's awful, but I
got
can't.
the same thing. And when I have cameras, we have cameras all over the church now. So even there would have been a time when I would have been unnerved, even interacting with like cleaning ladies and stuff.
Yeah.
But now everything's within earshot or audio shot, and I'm like, cool, I'm covered. And I never thought when I was younger, just I never thought church would be a place where I'd have to be worried about that and be worried about false accusations and all that.
Yeah.
It's sad that it's come to that. But to go back to the point, it's necessary to have a male for the boys because I've sat in when you guys talk about stuff and
I was the male in kids club, the elementary stuff. I was the male there, and it was the same thing. You need both.
You do. You need both.
And I know I've told Jen this. I don't know if I told you guys. I know I've told the youth kids, but I actually fought moving up. Kids are I've always considered elementary age kids to be like where I do well at. Whatever. Now I think that has changed somewhat, but I didn't want to make the move. And if I'm completely honest, I actually believe I should have moved up into helping out with youth group a year before I did.
Yeah. Well,
But I fought it.
God's timing.
Do you think that's because younger kids ask different questions than older kids do?
I may have at the time.
Yeah.
Not much phases me anymore with that kind of thing. Because you get them all.
Yeah. I mean,
You get all kinds of. Listen, there's been time recently, actually, I've considered pastoral counseling, not for something I'm experiencing myself, but there are people's lives that I get so involved in over the phone and chat and email and meeting with them to work out problems. There's problems that rock me. I'm like, I didn't think I'd ever hear this. I don't know how to respond. And I want to go to a pastoral counselor and go, listen, well, I don't know what to say.
Right.
And that's never happened, but that's now those things happen. And so I go to the Bible and I talk to other counselors and mentors and I go, listen, I got a unique thing. So I know that because as in any form of ministry, there's things you do that no one ever knows about. There's people you help, just conversation no one ever knows about. So I know just as a role in leadership that you guys have to have discussions with people where you're like, listen, I want to help you, where they share with you. Yeah. Now, without talking about specific people or being too specific on the problems, I mean, have you had young people come to you and say, listen, I got this thing going on, and to where you're like, wow, did not see this coming. I mean, and, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you... been some more in the past is what I am thinking about. I haven't had too many. I think nothing really surprises me anymore because it's been a lot.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty normal. But yeah, there's a couple things in the past that come to mind I'll do one, like a simple one was like a friendship situation and they were best friend. Like this is like a lighter one, I'll just say. And they were best friends and then they weren't, and it was like fighting. And I literally had to create a contract just for them to be in the same room together. So that they
created a contract?
Oh yeah. And I made them both sign it. Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was a lot, but that's like a lighter version. But there were some other things, like there's a lot. I can't even.
You can't, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot, and you have to just be there. I just got a book that I made everybody in youth volunteering I got it for them to read. It's called Seen, and it's on like the mental health stuff, and it's really, really, really good. And so
aimed specifically at working with youth.
Yes, with youth. It's really, really good. So I've considered taking that to the parents and maybe like teaching a class on that because it's so important, and everything in this book is so good and it's so helpful, and it's just being there and actually listening instead of being on your phone. And, you know, the kids just want attention. They just want, I mean, even my own niece, like I took her shopping yesterday and she just talk the whole time. And then when she was done, she was done. And, you know, and all she wants is to be heard. And that's what the kids want. They want to be heard.
Thank you. Yeah, you're right. That's huge. And that's advice when I work with a family that's having trouble. I always say, how much time do you spend with this person? How much time alone do you spend with this person? Okay, there was, you know, there's been 2 or 3 occasions where I said, take the child and have a day with them, and don't say anything like, we're gonna have a special day. Just go, hey, let's go and go to the store, go shopping, go get something.
100%.
So I go, just do that, and you'll get to know them better. Because first of all, if you want to know something about a kid, the best way to do it is to disarm them, and that means make them comfortable.
Yes.
You say you play a video game and go, so how's Josh doing? I heard he got in trouble the other day. While they're while they're relaxed and they're open, you don't sit them down at the table and go, we need to talk. They're going to clam up. That doesn't work.
Yeah. You go do something fun.
Yeah, and to get to know a kid, you disarm them. You create, just like you do with adults. You create a comfortable environment, and they'll talk. And they need to talk. They're people. That's what. I'm sorry, I don't want to be my soapbox too long here, but
it's good.
But the young people are so important, and so I think the church society learned a hard lesson in the past about be seen and not heard. And these kids that you're sticking in a box to be seen and not heard are developing their own thoughts in there about how to do things because you're not sharing anything. And now, you know, those chickens have come home to roost. We realize, hey, and it's hard to be a young person. And to dismiss them, to marginalize them because, you're just in your Tide Pods and your phones and you know, all the stuff people say about young people. It's like, I'm glad I didn't have the challenges they have, the distractions they have.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's harder to be a kid now than it was when I was a kid.
I think so.
And that's actually a good question. Having the distractions and things that they have now, do kids open up to you, or do they just go right back into their little shell with their cell phone?
Yeah. Are they willing to talk with you, or are they like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I'm bored. I'm bored.
Both, yeah. I have a hard time sometimes. I was telling Steve, I was like, I just don't like disrespect. So when people are disrespectful, I don't deal well with it. So
Yeah.
Amen.
So it's hard for me because I want to get irritated. I do get irritated.
Yeah.
But they do. But I think for some of them, they might be playing a game on their phone while you're talking. But I think that they still hear you.
Generally, they are still listening.
They're still listening. So I try to, because there's so much like ADHD, you know, like autism, like all of those things that are going on. Several of our youth.
I think a lot of it's just being young. I think they use. I mean, obviously, autism's a real thing, but ADHD.
Yeah.
I think that's people just going, these kids are too energetic. There must be something medically wrong with them.
I spend most of my time with the middle school group, right?
Right.
And the vast majority of the middle schoolers right now are guys, which is a complete 100% flip of where we were at like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
It was mostly girls.
Mostly girls.
And I was like, I don't know what to do. It's all
Right.
girls. You know, like, and now I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have prayed for that. But no, now I've got, I don't even know how many 6th grade boys. 6th grade boys are nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pure insanity the entire hour and a half that they're here. You know,
I was off the chain
it's just
in 6th
insane.
grade.
But even them, I can imagine.
I
I
mean,
think.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, out of control. I mean, I don't know. Okay.
But even them, even at that age, you can get them to open up.
Yeah.
But and guys are not as good at it, generally speaking, you know, but you can get them to open up, and it generally is not those times where you're sitting there, you're teaching, whatever like that, you're one-on-one. It's when you're just hanging out before youth group or after, or like we took the guys fishing last year, the one day, like those kind of things that are typically best at getting them to open up. But they do open up, and they'll ask all sorts of questions.
That's a good environment. It's sometimes they just need to see the kind of man you are.
They just
without
need to
answer,
get to know you and know that you care.
More
Yeah.
Then they're good.
Yeah.
When Denisha or anyone talks about Jenn, like when they talk about her character and all this stuff, it's obviously always good. But it's never because they say, Jenn taught me this or Jenn taught me that.
Right.
It's like,
No.
Jenn is this type of a person.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just, and that's why the whole more is caught than taught thing is true, because people, despite the fact that, we pour our efforts into teaching the youth as much as we can, at the end of the day, they look at what kind of people we are.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, that's important.
I think I know one thing that I always stress, especially talking with Steve and Denisha and Laurel and Mary Beth are helping out as well, just consistency. So always being there. Like I keep going with youth group all through summer, and it's not because I want to. All the time, because, I could have other things to do, but
when you're in leadership,
you just kind of have to do it. Cause
I've had people in the past that weren't. When Ed was a guest on this podcast, we talked about different things, and I can't remember if we talked about it on the podcast or if him and I in private talked about it, but we talked about people that lead and volunteer and do things within the church, but then do a half-hearted effort because they look at it like, well, I'm just volunteering anyway. I'm not getting paid.
Right.
Well, if that's your attitude, go home. I don't want you here.
Right.
Because volunteer means, hey, I'm stepping in 100%, not I'm dipping my toe in the water.
Right.
And in church leadership, you're right, consistency is huge. And there's a lot of people that, I don't know if I can make it tonight. Well, you know what? You volunteered for the wrong thing then. You got to be here.
Yeah.
And so that's frustrating because sometimes leadership, like a pastor who is no more or less important than anyone else in the church, he just fulfills a role. Plus, he's the guy designated to be in the know with every single thing that's going on everywhere because the other people have jobs. His job is to be the veins of the church and understand what's happening where and help make decisions when other people are too busy making other decisions to kind of steer a little bit. And when someone says, I'll help with this, and they fall short on doing it, like you can't leave early. You can't show up to teach something and be like, you know what, we're done, I'm taking off. No, hang on, you got to stay here till the parking lot's empty and lock up. That's part of your
absolutely
for youth and stuff like that. Now for church, I like on a Sunday I get here like I don't know, I could anytime between 4 and 7 in the morning.
We can't leave kids in the parking lot.
I'm here.
I don't know why
Right.
nobody wants us to do that, but we can't leave them in the parking lot.
Right, but yeah. So anyway, I don't want to keep going on too. I just concur with you. You're right. When you have to be consistent if you step into any leadership role, especially when it involves young people. They're watching you.
Yeah, they are watching and they know who's there. And same thing,
They know if you care.
They know if you care. Yeah.
When you show up to like their sporting event,
Yeah.
that's a big deal.
Yeah.
It is,
they
and
pick
it's
up on
also
that kind of stuff.
the fact that we have a kids club here. It helps kids transition into the youth club. Because what Kim and what Nancy have done in the past, and everything that has happened with those kids, is huge. That's huge in making them, giving them the ability to transition into the youth club. Within the church. And I'm just saying, I don't want to not mention.
Oh yeah.
That because, like I said, with a youth
so
pastor,
important.
they think that here's a volleyball and a Bible. Do something with these teenagers.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people diminish this with young kids too.
Yeah.
And they're like, and with here they teach them lessons, they teach them skills, and these kids are going to come back later, both youth group and little kids, and they're going to remember all you guys. Or it might happen when they're in their apartment in New York 15 years from now. Go, yeah, well, when I was a kid, I went to this church, and they're going to bring that up. And so what Kim and Nancy, I know Nancy's not actively participating, but I don't want to just say Kim. All the folks that work in our leadership with these kids. Is super important, but I'm going down rambling.
You're fine.
Let's see if we got it. Okay. What's the most shocking question a person has asked you, and how did you respond? We kind of covered that a little bit. If there's anything on here, is the church too uptight in the modern age, or are people just resistant to the truth? Now I know this is.
I think that answer is different depending on the church.
Yeah.
Because I know there are a lot of churches out there that are legitimately uptight.
Yeah.
Like, no doubt. And that has a place to an extent. Because you want to teach truth and all those kind of things. But there's a line that goes too far in a lot of churches, I think. And so I think there's legit churches that are too uptight, and that pushes people away. I think here we generally don't foster that at all. We're, I think, very friendly, very welcoming, very open to people, even people that have different beliefs. And, specifically in a youth group vein, we've got kids in youth group right now that have all sorts of different beliefs than what we are teaching, different Christian backgrounds, Catholic backgrounds, whatever it may be, kids that have no church background, kids that we talk about every now and then, they have no business being here. Yeah. And I say that
I have no idea.
On a podcast, like people listening may have no idea what we mean by that, but like they're kids that they have zero church background, they're rough kids, whatever it may be, and at some point years ago, we got them in a youth group or kids club, and if they were a kids club, they moved up. And why are they here? We would like to think it's because we tell them about Jesus, of course.
Yeah.
But they are here because of the people.
My path towards Christ that started in my youth started because I went to church and to summer camp with my neighbors. Now, I went to church prior to our neighbors, but it was riding the bus to Sunday school and riding the bus home and then that kind of thing. But it was in my youth that later I would access what was said, what was taught about Jesus, that prompted me to look further into it. So these things that they learn now that it seems like they may not be paying attention to, they're seeds.
It's just and then I stress out because I'm like, these kids know literally. A lot of them know nothing. I was counting and I'm like, that's 7 out of 8 kids that have no idea where anything is in the Bible, like any books of the Bible.
Right.
7 out of 8 when I was in a group. I was like, oh my goodness. And I'm stressing out because I'm like, I gotta do something, but I am doing something. I gotta remember I am doing something. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, because we want to see. I mean, we're humans, so we want to see the result. When you bake a cake, you want to see what the cake looks like in an hour.
Right.
And I look back from when I was a kid, and I was in church all the time. And then when I went home, my parents lived that life at home too, following Jesus, and so I got it all the time.
Right.
Generally speaking, most of the kids come to kids clubs or youth group or whatever aren't in that scenario at all.
Right.
A good majority of our kids, some of them go to other churches, some of them go here. There's also a large crowd that doesn't go anywhere. And for the most part, a lot of the kids aren't getting any of the Bible, any of Jesus, any all of that at home either. And so sometimes I get stuck with, oh my goodness, I've got these kids for an hour and a half a week.
Yeah.
I think
that is nothing.
Right.
There is so little time there, but we have them for an hour and a half a week.
And the fact that they keep coming back.
Yep. You have them for that time, so let's take advantage of it. Let's, teach them Jesus, teach them Bible, all that kind of stuff, and hopefully they will follow Jesus. But at least we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And they know that we care about them.
I think the question is the church too uptight, or are people just resistant to the truth? I think, and I didn't think about this when I wrote it, but I was just, as you guys were elaborating on this, I thought, well, you know what? I think people are resistant to the church because it's too uptight. And when I say
that's true sometimes.
Yeah.
Yep.
When I say it's too uptight, I should clarify what I meant. My intention when I use the word uptight is Doc, for example, my mentor, my pastor from before. He would talk to me about things, and he said that he would tell me about this one church that was what he described dying on the vine because they're old-fashioned and uptight. And I said, what do you mean old-fashioned and uptight? Because we used to meet every week for lunch. We'd catch up on everything. He said, well, they don't want to embrace anything new because when you say new or something like that, they immediately think it's an insult to traditionalism. They don't want to be increased media. They don't want to be online. They don't want to have a YouTube channel. They don't want the gospel to be pushed out, and they don't want to embrace young people to come into the church. They're like, this is what the Bible always said. This is what the Bible always has said. If you believe in Jesus, show up to church. If you don't, you're going to burn in hell. And it's like there's no
have fun with that in today's
there's
culture.
no effort to reach or expand. And I said, so what's going on down there? He said, well, the same members are there now that were 10 years ago, and they're dying.
Right.
And pretty soon there won't be enough to run the church.
Exactly.
So when I say uptight, I guess that's kind of what I'm, and I know that all my points aren't exactly spot on accurate about this one specific incident, but most of them are what he told me about that.
Yeah.
But they apply to a broad number of churches. And so when I say uptight, I kind of mean that. Kids should be seen and not heard. Jesus, believe in Jesus, God good, devil bad, hell hot.
Yeah.
And you show up every Sunday and hear that, and you're good. And I think that's uptight. To me, that's an uptight church. We don't want your questions. I think that's another thing.
Exactly.
When kids come with questions, how do you know God is real? Is it wrong? Why is it wrong to be gay? When they start asking the tough questions, and churches said, you don't ask questions. You just trust God. I think that's the definition of uptight.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
For sure.
You have to answer questions. What they do, they follow Jesus around. Jesus with the apostles would have been like being in a van with 12 kids. We're there yet? We're there yet? How much further? We're there yet? How much further? How much further? We're there yet? We're there yet? They spent their whole time asking him questions.
Right.
Yeah.
And he
They
answered.
were with him, and they still ask questions.
Yeah. And he'd one time he got so frustrated, he went,
I know.
Here's what it means, okay?
Yeah.
And so
I love that.
I do too. But in a way, he models what we should be, and we should be that way.
Yeah.
And I believe uptight, by my definition, is churches that don't tolerate what needs to be. It shouldn't even be called tolerated. Don't allow what should be allowed. Asking questions.
Yeah.
And interacting.
We added on a Sunday school class, quote unquote, digging deeper for the teenagers on Sunday mornings.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And I told Jen the other day, I was like, I am loving this. Like, part of me likes it more than youth group.
Yeah, I do too.
Maybe all of me. I don't know. And a large portion of why is because it is a smaller setting right now, and it's a smaller group. But within that, we have the ability to take all those questions on the fly and just go through them. You know, because it's a little different setting. It's just versus a Wednesday night when you're having teaching time and whatever. Like, we have lessons laid out, but every single Sunday morning in those lessons, other questions come up, and we get to deal.
And you welcome them.
Absolutely,
we love it.
You're not just like, I have an agenda. We need to stick with this.
No, yeah. I know Danielle, like one of the first weeks that we did it, I was asking, I ask questions like I don't know, just to get to see what they say, and so that they'll teach me. And so then by that, Danielle went off on this whole rant, and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that I kept talking. And I'm like, no, that's the whole
what
point.
We want.
Yeah, this is the whole point. You're talking it out. You're telling me what that's good. We want that, and we want you as a student to be
expressive.
Yeah, and learning and teaching and growing. So it was so funny. She was so apologetic, and I'm like, no, this is I would have stopped you if I felt like you were talking too much.
Right.
But I mean, she was talking the whole time, but she was teaching and she was talking and leading, and it was really good. So love it.
Because I know something that I've said here on this podcast before is that I'm a baby Christian. I've only been a Christian for now about 8 years. So I have a lot of questions, and I did at the beginning, and I do still now, and I'm very hesitant to ask them because I don't want people to think I'm stupid. But if I think back to 16-year-old me who had no idea about all this stuff, if I would have been exposed to this stuff at 16, the kind of questions I would have had at 16, and finding someone that I trust enough to ask these questions to, it would have been impossible.
Yeah.
And when you use the term baby Christian, well, I mean, I know what that means. Newer to the faith than most, and those questions, while they mirror, like you said, they mirror the questions of young people.
Yeah.
There's some people who are in the younger part of their faith, and their faith is stronger at that point. Their relationship with God is stronger at that point, because it's interesting. The most important and relevant parts of the Christian faith are embodied in that section of the walk. The initial getting to meeting Jesus, getting to understanding what's going on. There's never a reason. I'm not directing this just at you, but you did say this.
Yeah.
There's never a reason to feel stupid or dumb or anything like that by not knowing something, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who know better and act against it, and that's stupid. I talked about that in the sermon. The way we use stupid in the English language doesn't mean you're unintelligent. It means you know better and you shouldn't have done that, or something like that. Like when I try to be conscious for people like you described, baby Christians. When I write a sermon, I think to myself, there's going to be people out there that know the Bible better than me.
Right.
And there's going to be people out there who have a lot of questions, but they're afraid to ask because they don't want other people to think, oh, well, don't you know?
Right.
And so I try to put something in there for everyone. But if you ask me, the most important people to reach are the ones that have the most questions. Because, I've had people... I know for a fact there's a couple of people here that they haven't criticized me, but I know they know the Bible really, 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 really well. And they would like me to turn a sermon into more like an academic teaching with slides and all this stuff. I'm like, that will drive people out of the church. Right. I'm here to a different version of what Steve and Jenn do, and basically what you're talking about. Answer questions. Jesus is right over here. I'll be taking you to him, and I'll answer your questions on the way there. That's kind of an analogy of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah. So it's interesting you said that. You a baby Christian with questions and all that stuff. At 16, some kids aren't ready to handle those answers.
Right.
As an adult, and that's the big thing with young people and with older people. In your Christian faith, you're going to get to a point where you hear an answer to something and you don't like it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, the Bible says this. I disagree. Disagree all you want.
That's nice.
So now you got to make a decision. You disagree. Are you going to continue walking in this direction? Or are you going to say, I'm going to go my way?
Right.
And that's the tough part, especially for young people. Like you, when you get older, you have a higher capability for abstract thought. You can reason. You don't get your feelings hurt as easy. You kind of rationalize. But when you're a young person, you're more impulsive. You're like, no.
Yeah, but now imagine, a young person coming and talking and having these discussions with you guys, which is absolutely wonderful because you're like, okay, well, let's unpack that and let's talk about this, versus going to another church where they're just like, and they're uptight and they're like, no.
And one thing that we tell the kids and their parents is that, look, here is the deal. This is how we do youth group.
Right.
We do youth group in a way that we welcome all of that. And we will talk about drugs and we'll talk about sex and cutting, whatever it might be, all the hard stuff. Because here's the reality. Parents, whether you want to think about it or not, your kids are involved with whatever that bad thing is.
Yep.
They have friends that are, or down the road they will have to deal with it in some way.
So why not be proactive?
So let's actually talk about those things and look at them from a biblical perspective. And how do we deal with that?
Yeah.
How do we work on those things? How do we grow
and be honest
in those areas?
Yeah.
So please ask all the questions.
That's amazing.
Please.
You touched on something I kind of typed. I think I did. If I didn't, I've been thinking about kids that have diverse belief systems. And because I had to preach at school a couple times. And I think I've shared this with both of you. I don't know if I told you.
I think so.
Yeah. It was just so unexpected. Did I tell you that?
You told me.
I was okay, we're getting towards the end. And this little kid right in front of me goes, why do you force your beliefs on other people? And I go, what? And he goes, why do you force your beliefs on other people? And some teacher came walking up. I go, what are you talking about? Force my... I'm like, I'm a pastor. I came to this Christian church to speak. What are you talking about, kid? And so I bent down. I go, I'm not forcing my beliefs on anyone. I just came here to tell the truth. And he said, telling the truth that you believe, but you're forcing it on everyone else. I go, no, I'm not forcing it on anyone. And then I started to go into dad mode.
Yeah.
I wanted to go grab a shirt and go, listen to me. But, of course I didn't. I go, oh, really? Well, I'll tell you what. And then that's when the guy came up, the teacher guy, and said, can I talk to you for a second? And I go, yeah. And he goes, listen. He goes, we accept everyone in the school, and sometimes that means people that just want to bring their kid here because they think it's a good school and it's got good moral values. And I go, that kid didn't. I go, he doesn't think that. He's parroting.
Yeah,
he is parroting what he has heard at home. Kids don't use words like force your beliefs on. I mean, kids that are in that little,
that young,
right?
Yeah,
they don't say force your beliefs on others. I go, little kids don't use those phrases. He's parroting what he hears at his house. And he goes, I know. I go, that needs dealt with in this school. This is a Christian school, and it needs dealt with compassionately. You got to sit him down and go, hey, Here's what the Bible tells. I go, something's got to be done. He goes, I know. We accept a certain number of students who don't know Christ to get them to come to the Lord, but we're also responsible in keeping a balance of believers so we can teach the non-believing all that. He went through this whole thing, and it totally made sense. But I was surprised.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, if I'm a teacher and I see, the little Johnny jokes, here's the old, they probably, what? But anyway, the bad kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm not going to put him up by the pastor. I'm going to be like, put little Johnny back here so he don't say something. And this little, why do you force? I always thought it was funny. I was like, well, look at you.
Wow.
But that occurs. And you guys said you get people with different beliefs. Do you have people in youth group, young people, that you start talking about something and they roll their eyes?
Yeah.
Like, here we go.
Yep.
Like when it comes to, I don't know, weed or homosexuality or
all of it. Probably.
premarital. Do you? Okay, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. How do you combat
Yeah, what do you
that?
do? How do you react?
I don't know. Just answer the questions. There's nothing that you can just teach truth. And then I don't know what else to do. You know what I mean? Like, I can't force it.
So you haven't, I guess what I'm looking at is asking more so, have they been openly confrontational with your teaching, saying, no, that's not right, or something like that?
I don't think I've had that too aggressively.
I
know.
think I've had that.
Really?
Have you ever seen someone be so wrong, and as a Christian leader, you go, listen, I got to tell you, you're off track on this, okay? I mean, have you?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have kids that don't agree with things that we are teaching, without a doubt. And they'll voice that. I don't think as strongly as that little kid did that you had there necessarily, but they'll voice it.
He was like a fourth grader or something. He was little.
In a way that we can actually talk about it then. And we can say, okay, look, here's what the Bible says. Here's what Steve believes. Here's what I have experienced in my life attempting to follow Jesus. And, you have a choice to make.
Mm-hmm. So then you don't have kids who come in and say, well, my dad says that if you believe this, then you need a lobotomy.
No, I haven't really ever had that. Have you? I mean, I know that
He's smiling.
There's some things, that you get.
I mean, I know we have kids whose parents think differently than we do. I know that. I don't know if I've ever had a kid come in and do that.
Yeah, I really.
At least not obnoxiously.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Not obnoxiously.
But
I haven't
just
had
in a way
too
where
much.
we can talk about things, typically.
To me, that shows an amazing amount of respect to you guys that, they see you in a way that you're not their teacher who's trying to shove this stuff down their throat.
We're not. A lot more than that.
And my daddy says that la 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 la, but they actually treat you, I don't want to say as equals, but as with respect enough that they're not getting their pissy pants on, for lack of a better term.
I mean, I know there's been a couple people that have had some pissy pants on, but no, I do 100%.
Hey, Steve, should I be involved in this profanity? There's some people think that's a cuff word, and other people.
I'm
sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'm just kidding, Steve. Your face looked funny when she said that.
I had a thought processing is all that was going on.
What are pissy pants?
Now, I do know.
Is this something special clothing
25
line?
years ago, me might have believed that, yes. But I was just thinking, I can think of a couple instances where we have had parents pull their kids out because of
the frankness of your conversations, or
we attempted. There was times where I'm thinking of actually Jenn specific things, honestly, but attempted to deal with things that they were wrong. Right? Biblically, they were wrong.
I think
no
you guys
ifs, ands, or buts, and you can only deal with it to so much extent as a youth group leaders. You're not parents,
exactly,
all that kind of thing. You're not a school teacher, whatever. But you still do need to approach things. You still need to attempt to deal with things, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a time or two where kids have been pulled out.
I think one thing that works well for all ministry, but really well in youth, in a youth setting, is like we talked, more is caught than taught. And I got a letter from a girl in youth group a few weeks ago that was so kind, and it just said, "Hey, I listen to what you say, and that's pretty cool." It touched me. I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know that." But what works great is when they see you answering questions and telling other people, like, let's say you guys are in the setting in youth group, and and then this young person over here has an idea that's wrong and off track. Well, the other 4 kids in the room who know that it's wrong and off track, you also have them as your allies, spiritually speaking, to minister to them and to talk with them. And you know what I mean? Like, you got the Danielles and the Mary Beths and those people that are nice people that'll talk with.
Yeah. What are you saying? We're not nice?
No.
Just kidding.
No, I'm saying, you know how people respond to their own.
100%. Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
and age-wise. Age-wise,
Yeah.
your demographic, your age.
Absolutely.
There are certain kids that when they need a little extra something, you know who to push them to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jen,
and that works.
it might
That's
be
a
Mary
good thing.
Beth. If-
I did that with Mary Beth. I'm like, Mary Beth, this is a you. You're taking this situation.
Yeah,
I just
and that's
couldn't-
good.
It wasn't my.
And then you've
wasn't
got
a thing.
Denisha.
But that's good, though, that you know that you are not the right person to reach this kid.
I'm not.
Well, it's good to nudge people towards the one they have common ground with.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like you were just probably going to say, like, Denisha is on all cylinders all the time.
Denisha actually has a broad area of coverage because she's young enough that the young people know her and will listen to her. She's mature enough in her spirituality, and she's willing to learn. Like when I talk to Denisha, she's open-minded to things. She's not overly sensitive. She takes information and processes it and applies it. She's just, I can't say enough good about what kind of person she is in ministry. Now, she's young in ministry itself, so there's other things that you learn as you go along. And that's
just how it goes.
Yeah, that's not a fault of her character. That's just that experiential learning is something. But anyway, she can cover like a broad spectrum. But there are guys my age who only want to talk to guys my age, and there are kids in youth group that no matter what Jenn or Steve teach, they will want to confirm it with another 14-year-old, and that's just part of being 14.
Yeah.
And so I was saying, it's an asset to. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I had something on here that jumped off the page at me, and probably the pizza.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
It was the
Oh, I know what it was. It was this because we're talking a lot about youth ministry, but kind of the one of the other topics, define the characteristics of a good / effective youth leader, group leader, pastor, worship leader. Now, the roles of the church. We don't have to spend a whole ton of time on this. But I think it's important because it contrasts well with the other question about an uptight church. What is an uptight church? Because people listening to the podcast, since you guys are, in essence, in charge of probably the most important part of the church, which is the young people. I mean, what I do is important. I'm not diminishing that. But they won't show up over here if you ruin it over here.
Exactly.
So you have a lot of responsibility. So anyway.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
But so you guys do an outstanding job. So how do you guys see those roles? Like, good or effective, start with a youth leader. Like, how would you describe one?
Well, I talked earlier about just consistency. I think it's super important. I've seen a lot of hurt. Like even at church camp a couple years ago, there was a girl that wasn't involved in our church, but her youth pastor left just because like once you get used to having a youth pastor and the consistency of that, and you grow to like them, and they, you build relationships with your students. So, and he left, and it just she was very devastated. Yeah. That happened to me too. So, I understood that, but I just think that consistency is extremely important. Yeah.
Steve?
I mean, I know we've already covered it, but just that with that consistency there, just showing the kids that you actually care. You're not just there, but you're also effective with them. You're I'm missing the word, but you actually want to be involved with them. They can see
you're genuinely listening.
Yes, genuine. Yes, you're genuine with them, and they will pick up on it whether you are or not. in a hurry.
Time.
Yeah, we talked. We had a meeting the other week, a youth leader meeting, and we kind of talked about that because sometimes we come into youth group, and some of us, most of us, all work, and then we come to youth group, and then we're like,
it's a quick turnaround.
It's a lot. So we're tired, and sometimes the last thing we want to do is like, here we are, we're at youth group, woohoo!
Yay!
Like it'd be exciting.
Sit down and shut up.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we come
There are
in,
days.
and you get on your phone and you're like focusing on that, and so I was trying to just let everybody know, I know that we're tired because we worked, and now we have to do youth group, but we have to be here. Like, this is our responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to come in, we're going to try to be early, we're going to try to stay until everything's done, and we're going to focus completely on the students and like not have our cell phones, because sometimes even I'm like, I'm just going to scroll here while we're just hanging out at the beginning, and like if somebody wants to talk to me, they can. But yeah, because you want to be there and you want to be available, because that's what they want, they need. So
I think we could just stop at youth leader there. We don't have to get group leaders. The same stuff applies.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I looked at that earlier. Is a lot of the same stuff applies.
Because with group leader, what I was thinking when I wrote that, I was thinking about like people that lead a Bible teaching class and all that stuff. But it's pretty much the same thing. A pastor. I know. I am the pastor, so it's kind of stupid for me to answer that question.
Yeah.
I guess. And then if you don't say the right things, I'm going to be secretly angry with you. So
we're just not going to cover it at all.
Yeah.
we're just not going to. No, we should cover it. It's a podcast, so there's other people listening that don't know us or this church.
True.
So I think there's 4 people in Denmark that really hang on to this.
We're big in Germany.
So Jen, what's a good pastor look like?
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't say look like. She'll I don't know. Anyway,
we don't, a good pastor.
not you. Sorry.
Definitely not. No, just being approachable, I think, is important. Yeah, I don't know. Genuine, obviously, wanting to teach and being a good teacher is important.
Yep. Being somebody that people know that when they have questions, they can go to, somebody that, same thing as us as youth leaders, can be challenged and can work through that. There are times when, even things Drew has said, I'm like, and then I look into it further, or we talk about it, and I'm
Right.
like, I'm wrong.
I didn't think about it like that.
What do you
Yeah,
know?
it's different.
I haven't ever thought of it that way. I need to think of it, or whatever.
Yeah, that's something.
It happens, and it needs to happen.
And it does, and it needs to happen with. And I'm sure there's other people too, where you encounter that. You'll teach someone, they'll be like, and then later they're like, oh, you know what? Mm-hmm. You were right. Because I spend like all week, I live inside of a sermon, and I look up every commentary,
Yeah,
everything.
you
I
deep
check
dive.
I do. I deep dive to make sure I'm right.
Right.
So when somebody comes up and they go, I'm not sure I agree with this one, I'm like, really? Pound sand. Bye. No, I don't do that. I'm like, okay, well, let's talk. I do that. Well, let's talk about it. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, do you know how deeply I've dove into this over the years? And I don't know. But
Oh my gosh.
but you're right. It is important to say, well, and there's a key element there. People should look into it.
Yeah.
Right.
When you disagree with something, you should look into it. Because
We tell the kids that too.
The pastor of the church.
Please don't take this as my words.
Yeah.
Look into the Bible about it.
Yes.
Not me.
You should. Yes.
I'm trying to
because
teach
the
the truth,
pastor's
I
not
hope,
the emperor
but-
of the church. He's just and he can, make a mistake. I mean, maybe he needs you to find something out and come back and go, look, dude, I
Right.
found this, or you need to verify it, not because pastor said, but because I read. That's the way it should.
Right.
It should come across. I know we're getting close to the.
No, you're okay.
When you guys look down the list, I see Jen. You've thought through some of the answers. What is there anything on here? Because we like always make a list of our talking points. Sometimes that really you're passionate about. That you say, hey, I want to talk about this one thing here because we're kind of reaching the end of the podcast. So anything that jumps off that's really something you want to address?
I think what are the biggest challenges in reaching the youth?
Yeah.
I don't know if we completely, we may have
Go ahead.
breezed by it. I wrote down some things on that, but just knowing like COVID was a disaster.
Yeah.
So that was just really, really, really difficult.
And it's still affecting them.
And it still is because it created bad habits of not coming, and that's for church as well. So yeah, so that created some bad habits. And then like people always tell me, "Oh, we're just so busy. We're just so busy. Busyness."
Nuts.
And I'm like, "Oh, good. Yeah, I understand. I don't really have anything going on, so I couldn't possibly be busy." But those are the things that you think about, but like you don't say because you're like, "Yeah, I know." And then I'm like, "But you're creating, so don't be upset when your children aren't as keeping that as a church as a priority because you are not."
When I was a kid, church was priority.
Yeah. Like I make my schedule, like I never schedule anything on a Wednesday or a Sunday. I never have. Like my entire life, those are set for, but of course I'm psycho, so whatever.
You're spot on. COVID for what you do. I mean, you're working with a group of people who are predisposed to be difficult to reach because of the world they live in.
Yeah.
And then when we came here, my wife and I came here.
Oh yeah.
It was the COVID, the dark times.
Yes.
That's what it was. It was dark times.
Yeah.
Churches were closing.
We hired a pastor in the middle of COVID.
Yeah. And then
Yes.
well, we were in this. I'm like, what's the churches? I mean, I don't want to put myself outside because I know everyone was having this happen. Uncertain future.
Uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so we get here and we try to navigate through everything. We're like, oh man. And ultimately and collectively we make these decisions that we hope are the right ones. We hope we're blessed. And one of the big ones we made was to stop live streaming services because church is about fellowship. And we also recognize some people need to see and hear it and have access to it. So we put but people were doing that. They were becoming complacent. I don't need to go to church. And then when you put it online, like, now I really don't need to go to church. And you can't recreate fellowship on a video. You can.
I had a teenager tell me that recently.
Tell you what.
That, I watched it on.
Watched it online.
Watch it on YouTube,
on
whatever.
Actually, last 3 weeks we did. I'm like, but that's not the same, dude.
No, that's not fellowship.
Yeah.
That's learning.
Great, good.
Viewing,
but
not fellowship.
Right.
And it was a challenging time. And I can, especially with kids, when you get a kid who Wednesday, they're used to going, oh, we're going to church. Because one of the questions I put on there is church a chore or a joy? And I think for everyone, depending on what's going on that Sunday, they can feel different.
They're
Right. Yeah.
But God knows that. And then when you get to church, like, man, God wanted me here today, something special. And you understand it. But all right.
No, I totally agree with you because that one Sunday you don't show up to church or that one time you don't do youth group, that was that one time that someone really wanted to talk to you.
Right.
And ask you something, and now that moment's gone and they're not going to do it.
Yep. That's true.
Big time.
Steve, is there anything on there that you were like super wanting, passionate about?
I think we've gotten to talk a lot about a lot of the stuff that I wanted to make sure we talked about.
All right. Well, you guys are definitely a feather in the cap of this church and pillars of the church. And I haven't had you both on here talking about this topic, but I feel blessed and fortunate that I didn't walk into a church that needs fixed. I walked into a church that said, hey, welcome aboard. And for me, I think that's God just being extremely generous to me because a lot of pastors have to go to a church where they got to fix all these people.
Yeah.
I didn't have to fix anyone here. I just had to come in and pick up an oar and start rowing. And so I was very blessed in that sense. Everybody was already good and deeply care about what they do here. So hats off to you guys for that. And thank you for having me here for sure, because I can't tell you how happy and proud in the good way. I talk about pride in sermons. There's
right.
different kinds of pride. There's the good use of the word proud means you're very, very satisfied and happy. And then there's the bad pride, which means I don't need God for anything. But anyway, I am very proud to be part of this church. So in our closing statements, Jackie, you got anything you want to kind of close out with?
No, I just think you guys are doing such a great job. And I wish there would have been people like this, when I was growing up and had people that I could actually have turned to. I think things would have been different. So I think it's just amazing that you guys are so open and inviting as you are. I think it's super.
I concur.
I concur.
Stephen, as we talk, I want to talk like the emperor. You can do that if you end every sentence with Skywalker. I learned that. I was walking around the house today. Say, if you, yes, I'll have more Cheetos, Skywalker. When the police says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" No, I don't, Skywalker. If you can end every sentence with Skywalker, you can sound like, you know, Drew, you want some coffee? I would like some coffee very much. Skywalker. All right, sorry. I went down a rabbit hole. Jenn's on here, so she always reminds me. We talk about Star Wars in the office. It's
that's
like
true.
It's our common ground.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jen, what's on your heart as we close out that you would like to have some final thoughts you want to leave?
Final thoughts. I don't know. Ministry is where I'm meant to be. I was led into ministry. I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I know I do a lot. And sometimes it gets crazy, but I just really like ministry. It's where I'm supposed to be. God led me into it and it's good. Love it. Ditto. Amen. Mm-hmm. I guess that's going to wrap it up this week for us here on the podcast. Sorry. Emperor's funny. Thank you guys for listening. We had a great time. We could continue this conversation on, but Steve, it was great to have you on here the first time. Jen, welcome back. Yeah.
All right. We're signing out. Thank you.